It's August 24th in period 1B, and I'm going to introduce a new thing today, but we'll still have time if you're catching up on the previous ones. So one thing we haven't had so far is an assessment grade. If you remember, the grade book has assignments and then assessments, and currently we've only got that first category, and the second one's empty, which means they're kind of out of proportion. If you have, 4 assignments, then each one's a quarter of the grade, when that's not really the way it should be. Once we have this assessment, then it will take that chunk, and later assessments will share that chunk, and then the assignments will be a lot smaller proportionally. So this is going to be not a quiz or a group project or anything big. It might just take you 1 period, but if it takes 2, that's fine. And it's going to use all the stuff we've covered so far: the input, the print, a little bit of math, a little bit of type stuff, a little bit of if, and maybe 1 or 2 extra things depending on how you do it. So this is going to have a question that asks the user, what year were you born? Okay, and that's almost enough to get their age, but it depends on when we are in the year versus when their birthday is, right? If you say, when were you born, and somebody says 2015, well, they might be 6, they might be 5, it depends. So you're close, but you're not quite there. So what I've got here is it asks for the year, makes a first guess, and then if it's off by 1, then you can adjust and say, oh, well, in that case, you must be 1 less. And then the final criterion here says use variable names that are informative and understandable. This is not like one of those CodeHS units where you have to use exactly a certain variable name, like, exactly with the same underscores and everything. But don't just do X and Y either. You want it to be something where if I look at it, or if a month later after you've forgotten about this, you look at it, you'd still be able to say, oh, that's the name, that's the year they put, that's the current year, and bada bing, bada boom. So doing this might take 3 lines, it might take 10, depending on how you arrange it, and that's okay. One thing to keep in mind, and that I'm going to stress whenever we do anything bigger, is that there's more than one way to do it, okay? Theoretically, there are infinite ways to do it, although a lot of them would be pretty dumb. You are not being graded by the computer on this one. You're being graded by me, so I'm not going to say, oh, well, this variable name is not what we wanted, or it prints it in the second line instead of the first. I'm not going to be that picky. In fact, you don't even have to do exactly this. Like, ask the user what year they were born, make a guess, and then make an adjustment. You could do ask them what year, and then say, have you had your birthday? And then say, oh, well, now I definitely know that you're 23 years old or whatever. So you could even rearrange the order of these things if it's doing the same job and doing it just as well. Feel free to have a little creativity and efficiency. If you're ever looking at a project and you say, oh, what if we did this kind of math instead of this kind of math, or did it in this order instead of this order, as long as it's doing the stuff, getting the answer, not having errors, being able to make sense if somebody else looks at the code, being able to make sense to the user, all that stuff is what matters, not, doing exactly X, Y, and Z. So I did that yesterday in one class, and some of them, like, boom, got it. Hang on, I tried to snap and it wasn't very pretty. Let me try again. That was better. Some of them got it right away in 15 minutes, and others took a while and still weren't done, and that's fine. If you're working on this today and you don't quite finish, you can do it next time. And this isn't meant to be big, but it isn't meant to be, like, timed. We're not giving you an I-step right on the board, 45 minutes left or something. So feel free to mess around if you try it once and you think you can do it better and you want to change something. That's great. Let me give a couple tips of like FAQs of things that people were running into. Number one, the biggest error I saw, and kind of the hardest one, is parentheses. Because if you have parentheses in line 3 that don't close, and it tells you there's an error in line 4, you're going to keep looking at line 4 and figure out, hey, there's nothing wrong here, and then you're going to be flummoxed. So if you ever see an error on a line and it looks okay, check the line above to see if it started something that it didn't finish. Most likely parentheses. Another possibility is colons or indenting or something like that. So check those. And then finally, although this one is a little less hidden, the other error we've seen a lot is type stuff. If you have a string and you're trying to treat it as an integer or vice versa, or if you're trying to do Boolean stuff and you put true in quotes versus true capital TRUE, they're going to be treated differently. So keep that in mind. There is a thing I showed in my other class about input, making it non-case sensitive. I'll post that later. I want to make this video short, so I won't go into it, but there are ways to get around that stuff. If you're ever coming up with some weird issue, just know that people have probably been coming into that issue for 50 years, and they've thought of ways around it. So open up another tab in Google or whatever. There's always a way. I'm going to end the video now, except I'm going to say, hey, if you got one of these forms, make sure to turn it in. If you don't have one of these forms, make sure to get it either in person from me or printing from the spot on Google Classroom. Thanks.